Most people in the UK will spend around £1 million during their lifetime. Not on luxury, not on yachts or mansions, just on life. If someone earns roughly the median UK salary of about £34,000 and works for around 40 to 45 years, their lifetime earnings will usually fall somewhere between £1.3 million and £1.6 million before tax. After tax, that leaves roughly £900,000 to £1.1 million of take-home income. So in simple terms, the average person has about £1 million pass through their hands during their working life. But here's something I noticed when I worked in banking. Month after month, I could see the same patterns in people's accounts. Salaries arriving, bills leaving, car payments, subscriptions, credit cards, holidays, shopping. And when you see those patterns repeated across hundreds of people over many years, something becomes very clear. Financial outcomes later in life are rarely random. They're usually the result of the same spending patterns repeated again and again over decades. So today, I want to take that monthly bank statement view and stretch it across an entire lifetime, because when you do that, you begin to see exactly where the £1 million tends to go. Some costs in life are unavoidable. Others come down to the decisions we make along the way, and those decisions quietly shape our financial future. So let's start with the first major deduction that appears on almost every bank statement: taxes. Taxes, the first major deduction. If someone earns around £1.6 million across their working life, a large portion of that disappears before they ever see it. Income tax, national insurance, VAT on spending, fuel duty, council tax, insurance tax. When economists estimate the total tax burden across a lifetime, it is not unusual for somewhere around £400,000 to £500,000 to go to the government. That money never reaches your bank account, which means the £1.6 million lifetime income quickly becomes closer to about £1 million of real spending power. And that's the number we're really working with. Housing, rent versus mortgage. Everyone needs somewhere to live. Housing is usually the largest cost of a lifetime. Let's start with renting. Outside London, the average UK rent today is roughly £900 to £1,200 per month. If someone spends around £1,000 per month on rent across 40 years, that becomes roughly £480,000, nearly £500,000. And at the end of those payments, there is no asset left behind. Now compare that with buying. A typical house in many parts of the UK might cost somewhere between £200,000 and £300,000. Over a 25-year mortgage, including interest, the total paid might reach somewhere around £300,000 to £400,000. But once the mortgage is paid off, you own the property. The money hasn't disappeared. It's sitting there as equity. So housing is unavoidable, but the structure of housing dramatically affects the financial outcome. Transport, the silent wealth drain. Cars are one of the most underestimated lifetime expenses. In the UK today, the average new car costs more than £40,000, and the vast majority are financed. Monthly car payments often sit between £400 and £600 per month. Across a working life, that alone can reach £200,000 or more. And that's before adding fuel, insurance, maintenance, repairs, tyres once everything is included. The lifetime cost of transport can easily reach £200,000 to £250,000. Now here's where behaviour starts to matter. Two people living on the same street could have very different numbers here. On a person drives modest cars and keeps them longer. Another upgrades regularly, both feel normal. But over decades, the difference could easily reach £100,000 or more. The cost of living. Life itself has a cost: food, heating, electricity, phone bills, internet, insurance, clothing, subscriptions. Across a lifetime, these costs quietly accumulate. If someone spends roughly £6,000 to £8,000 per year on these everyday expenses across 40 years, that becomes roughly £250,000 to £300,000. Most of these costs are unavoidable. People need food, people need heating, people need clothing. But even within these categories, behaviour still matters. Small decisions repeated thousands of times quietly change the totals, and it's important to say something here. When we run these numbers, someone living a fairly modest life might still have around £140,000 left by retirement, plus potentially equity in a house if they manage to buy one. But that number is not guaranteed. Many people end up with far less. Some still carry debt, some have very small pensions, and some have to continue working well into later life. And the numbers we've looked at so far don't even include many of the things people naturally do in life. Holidays, trips away, family weddings, funerals, helping children, unexpected costs that appear along the way. Once those are included, the financial margin can become even smaller. The consumer gap. This is where financial lives really start to diverge. The consumer gap up to this point, most of the costs we've looked at are largely unavoidable: taxes, housing, food, energy, transport, but the final financial outcome is rarely decided by those costs. It's decided by consumer behaviour. Credit cards in the UK often charge 20 to 30% interest. If someone regularly carries a few £1,000s of credit card debt and only makes minimum payments, the interest alone can quietly cost thousands over time. Across decades, it's entirely possible for someone to pay £20,000 to £40,000 purely in credit card interest. Money that bought nothing. Then there's convenience spending, food delivery, takeaways, coffee shops, eating out. If someone spends £40 per week on takeaways, that becomes about £2,000 per year. Across 40 years, that becomes roughly £80,000. Clothing can also be a large category. If someone spends £1,500 per year on clothing, that becomes roughly £60,000 across a working life. Researchers estimate the average home contains hundreds of thousands of items, and some studies suggest people accumulate up to 300,000 possessions over their lifetime. People are extremely good at accumulating things, but things are not assets. Most possessions remove money from your life rather than add to it. Every pound spent filling a home with things is a pound that cannot be used to build financial security. Finally, there's something economists call lifestyle inflation. As income rises, spending rises automatically. The car improves, the holidays become more expensive, the house becomes larger, the lifestyle expands. But the savings don't, which means someone can earn more money than ever, yet still feel financially stretched. Looking at money across an entire lifetime reveals something important. Most people do earn enough to build financial security. But money doesn't organize itself, it follows behavior. Once someone begins noticing the difference between necessary spending and lifestyle spending, their financial life begins to change. And when those decisions repeat over decades, they quietly build something powerful: freedom. And that's when you will truly love your money.